Lines come off the bits at Tokuyama with a practice snap, and the hoses that fed the largest battleship ever built slither back across the quay like spent serpents. A clerk in a cap 2 sizes big stamps a manifest that pretends to be ordinary. Every man watching knows the arithmetic. Fuel for a sprint south, no return legs, a one-way run toward an island already crowded with dead. The haze smells of bunker oil. A petty officer, voice trimmed to die at his mate's ear, says what the paper won't. One way. A bell answers, the hull hums in its bones, and Yamato's weight eases free of Japan before anyone has time to take it back. In the compartment where paper becomes motion, glue and damp canvas make the air taste like old envelopes. Vice Admiral Ito signs orders with a hand that never shakes. The text is short and poisonous. Proceed at speed to Okinawa, attack transports, beach if needed, fight as a shore battery until destroyed. 90,000 tons made into a fort with no anchor to heave again. No one coughs. The ink dries. On the chart, a course smears green into open sea, ruled by carriers, and the clock starts on how long we can stay unseen. A whistled signal drops into the boiler flats, and Chief Petty Officer Tanaka reads needles, edging red in heat that flays the eyes. Overpressure, he tells his crew, we ride the case hard. Sweat runs into collars. The deck plates twitch with each open of the throttles. Above, steam feathers ragged from twin funnels, while oily water peels away in a paler gray than the sea. Every extra knot costs metal and fuel we do not have. The order is simple anyway. Best speed, no reserve, no pretending the fuel ledger has a miracle to discover. On the pier, the tugs wake on spools, but in flag plot, the room is a held breath. We hear the ship answer her helm, and the argument that won't quite form. Ito's eyes find the chart. The Army demands a gesture, he says. The Emperor has been briefed. If we do not go, the Army will say the Navy hid behind the inland sea while Okinawa burned. Honor is a currency even against bankruptcy. He draws a line that points into a mouth we cannot close and refuses to add a route home. The first irreversible act is already behind us. The inland sea is a cathedral that chants our engine note back at us. Fishermen glance and pretend not to. The ensign snaps brave until you remember cloth cannot stop steel. I pass a 25mm mount. Boys joke with a sharp edge. Old hands polish sights that will wander under recoil. Our anti-air is volume over precision. Under these headlands, the sky is bounded and known. Beyond them, it belongs to carriers with patience. We feel the boundary underfoot, like a step in the dark. Below, Tanaka rides the trembling needles. He knows the leaders in the double bottoms and the burn it will take to hold 22, maybe 25 knots while the sea is with us. The captain wants sprinting room. The admiral wants room to maneuver. Fuel sets its own geometry. Weave too early, and we turn the tank dry before the island. Tanaka dips into the red again. He can save the boilers with a quarter turn. He doesn't. The orders above his head say, beaching. A beach is useless if you spare the metal now. Signals Petty Officer Kubo tends the Type 13 and Type 22 sets like reluctant gods. On the scopes the sea is smear, hill shadows crawl, small blips grow and die at the coast. Silence hides you and blinds you both. As the last islets drop astern, he catches a wedge too far out to be a shore echo. He doesn't call it yet. He leans closer. Waiting is a decision you can't amend later. On decks not ours, men in white jerseys chalk depth on tin fish and lift 1,000-pounders under gull-gray wings. This is our fear with legs, shallow Mark 13s to slide under belts, fuses set to bite a heartbeat late, pilots briefed to alternate bearings until no quarter is safe. Doctrine learned with other ships is here to finish arguments. The hour is the only mystery left. Ito leans over the exit lanes, fingertip on routes already caged by habit. Submarines will sit like knots in rope. Radar pickets will throw trails into the sky from destroyers that have done this all year. Are we surprise or schedule? The fuel manifest answered that. Without tankers ahead, stealth is pretense. Hugging coast buys miles and loses hours. Speed is our one asset, and speed is a flare on the horizon. We don't tell the gunners what that means. The sky will. Word moves through the galleries. Yahagi takes station like a hawk. Destroyers wheel like herders, then settle. Air lookouts pace their arcs. Weather outside the inland sea is making a front. Rising seas, broken cloud, whitecaps knitting like rough cloth. Good spotting weather, if we allow it. We will keep to the land's shadow as long as we can. Not long. In the engine room, the heat is intimate, a hand on the face. Tanaka slams a valve. The hiss is a beast breathing. He knows the instant when flow turns to fatigue, when a tube sings high before it parts. He knows the weight of boys above and balances them against numbers on a wheel hot enough to burn through. Terms like overpressure stop being warnings and become choices with a price paid only here. In flag plot, the quiet argument hardens. Utility loses to symbol. There are men here raised on decisive battle, on engravings and corridors that taught bowing as strategy. Ritual has brought us where ritual looks like plan. Ito closes his eyes once, then orders, radio silence unless struck. No turn back for weather. If shells cannot reach, a beach is a target. The sea takes the words and makes them the size of chain. Aft, gunners strip tarps from ammo and stack clips like metal pastries. The 127s swing through drills. The 25s clack their bolts dry like impatient insects. A chief barks sectors. Conserve until they're committed. Don't light the sky for nothing. The younger hate conserve because it tastes like fear. The older love it because they've watched ammo vanish into drills. Someone says the Americans will hear us before they see us. Someone else says that's the point. Both are right and worthless. Kubo passes a blank slip to the communications officer. It says there is no escorting air. Land-based fighters cannot ride past the headland. Range ends where ours begins. The Americans own the space in between. The blank means we are alone once we step out of this bowl. He presses his fingers to the set's casing and wishes for an enemy voice to replace the quality of silence that lies. We pass the last torii where sea meets shrine, and men who don't pray anyway touch rail like prayer when seen from a distance. The channel opens. Air changes flavor. Even gulls go elsewhere. The bow lifts into longer swell. The world stretches. Over that line, 1,000,000 men drive roads across coral, and the Navy they brought breathes airplanes. We aim like a spear and let the throw finish us. In the chart room, we unroll U.S. search arcs penciled for months. They prowl daily whether we come or not, though they probably know we come. The choke points have submarines in place, patient, aligned with our habits. The Admiral nods like at weather. He sends the navigator up to the bridge to take us past the last headland and into the cage. To port, a signal lamp flickers reply. The escort captain glances at our beam and looks away. Screens have a look when they are for show and when they are for survival. This is somewhere between. Their 25s and 127s will spit, their wakes tangle to sheer torpedo tracks. Their men will die first, because that is how shields work. Some will die for ships that cannot be saved, because that is how duty works. Men square that logic and walk to their stations anyway. In the wardroom, a pot of tea shivers. A young officer asks too openly if our guns will reach the anchorage before we die. The range tables say yes. If, he hears can, forgets if, wants a number. I give him one. Numbers are masks. They don't stop fragments, and they don't float. The table goes quiet, and the ship hums louder. Wind gets hands on the pagoda mast and tugs. Halyards whistle like teeth. The 18.1-inch guns are dogged fore and aft. Men glance as if barrels might tilt up and throw a solution at the sky. The main battery is the wrong weapon for what waits. The ship knows it. Impatience runs underfoot when airplanes are said aloud. The 127s and the light swarms are the net we throw. Hope stands under recoil because there is nothing else to do. Tanaka signs pump schedules and assigns men to repair parties who already know which compartments they will flood to keep the ship level. Counter-flooding buys time by adding water. A textbook becomes ugly. You tell it as a lever at school. Here it's choosing which lung to fill to breathe. He knows where he will push starboard if port fills. He knows there is one mistake that will roll the numbers over us, and nobody higher can argue with it. On the bridge, Ito receives a final call that adds nothing. No deviation allowed, no reinforcement, only a formal blessing poured into a man who tried to cancel this before he was told he could not. He weighs the handset like it had mass. He looks forward, not back, not at officers' eyes waiting for a speech. He speaks in orders you can write. Maintain course and speed. Closed up, air lookouts doubled, no waste of ammunition. Words become motion because that is what words are here for. Kubo feels the sea change on his skin as much as in his instruments. He wipes salt smear off the scope and stares until it swims. The wedge that teased him dissolves, then returns stronger, then is nothing again. He circles a place with a pencil that others might not even see, and reports nothing because the proof isn't there. The decision to hold becomes itself an act with a cost. Wind hardens into an edge. Far east, carriers turn bows to wind to make it soft. Ordnance crews roll bombs like barrels. A lieutenant taps attack axes as tidy as the lines on our own plot. Split bearings, starboard from the northwest, port from the southeast, force the giant to split helm and mind. They have studied us. Chalk lines from war colleges become trajectory and metal now. Our armor is about to learn what year it is. Yamato clears the last shoulder of Kyushu. The horizon looks clean the way a trap looks empty from far away. Somewhere beyond it, the first search plane has already flown through our exhaust and turned home, giving bearings that translate geometry into doom. We have left lands blind and entered the reach of watchers we cannot see. The net we hoped might be a rumor is a fact. We just don't yet know from which square the first hand comes. Who is already waiting in the sky? Who is already waiting in the sky? Leaving land's cover exposes the giant to eyes that need no glass. The ship's pitch lengthens as she clears Kyushu's lee. The pagoda mast groans, halyards snap. Kubo's headphones crawl with static not ours. Bridge glass shivers as Tanaka's boilers eat oil we won't replace. Ito watches a seam between water and haze where wings can hide. The navigator mutters barometer falling, rising seas, clean air for spotting, and nobody says aloud what it means. Far away, the answer is in motion. Helen Graves stands in the shade of a white 1,000-pounder as ordnance chalks codes and pushes lugs into wing locks. Torpedo crews argue depth, agree on 10 to 13 feet to duck under Yamato's belt. Chalk dust smears on Mark 13, paint like impatient prayers. 4 flat tops swing into wind, lines of aircraft roll, nose wheels lift, prop arcs chew mist into streamers. Graves checks axes, starboard flights from the northwest, port from the southeast, crossing patterns to ring the big hull into showing both sides. She salts the plan with caution, fuel, fatigue, a sky that eats inattentive men. Radio silence holds like a vow. Yamamoto Atsushi fingers the line in his pocket. If fuel is insufficient, beach and fight until destroyed. There is no schedule for air cover, only hope that land-based fighters might appear like ancestors. Kubo swaps binoculars for scope and back, trying to turn glints into planes. Type 22 paints ghosts and gulls and leaves you with guesses. Every minute without contact isn't relief. It is a wire pulled tight. On a phosphor screen hundreds of miles away, a search operator shades a green bloom into certainty. Main body, southbound, 22 knots, he calls. Multiple large echoes. Bearings chain through picket ships and up to Graves' board, where plastic gets a grease circle and a wedge moves under a broken ceiling. She draws intercepts with a finger, parcels arcs to squadrons. The clock she hears is human. Flight time, fuel, and nerves. By the time the first wave crosses the picket line, the escorts have seen too much sky. Yahagi flanks like a hawk. Destroyers arrow in neat files ahead and astern. White wakes writing cursive in steel gray. Yamamoto fits headphones, listens to Kubo's numbers and a borrowed scope's hiss. Ito asks speed down the pipe. Tanaka delays a breath, coaxing flame in a space where caution is sin. The turbines spin and the bearings sing notes he files under later. Later will not arrive for most. Graves calls the first roll, Avengers low with torpedoes, Helldivers high to hammer, Hellcats to scrub the cap and rake guns. Briefing said, fierce but poorly controlled AA, 25mm mounts shake, tracers net with holes. Deck armor thick and sloped, AP bombs need height and timing, first dives aim to blind directors. Pilots nod through static, they break into boxes and slide into the wind. Kubo's voice tightens, high dots sunward, then shape, then truth. The 127s and 25s bristle. A forward director barks ranges that jump 100 meters at a time as men try to make numbers keep up with nerves. Flak throws black blossoms wide to take the measure. Dive bombers roll, bellies flashing silver, and pressure hits like a fist. First bombs walk the water to stake our turn. One skims steel, another detonates close off port bow and plasters the bridge with black-streaked sheets. On the port quarter, a destroyer takes a near miss and flips men into our wake. These are opening bars. No one mistakes it for rehearsal. Graves' wingmen feed patterns by radio to those still inbound. Starboard aft quadrant heavy with tracers, approach port low, staggered torp tracks to deny combing. She tunes out a breathless claim of a kill and listens for gaps, where to put weight until the spine gives. As they pull up, Helldivers' shadows skip over our deck. A delayed thump under the waterline rings the hull. Graves files the note and adjusts the next dive to jar forward fire control. The shock in the engine room is not heard, but worn. Tanaka feels the blow through boots. If it were a torpedo, the lights would dim and the deck would moan lower. He pours feed water forward against spray creeping down vents, keeps steam alive because pumps die without it, and pumps are life. Every turn to Koma Wake is stolen from Okinawa. The voice pipe whistles. He pretends his pulse didn't answer it. Ito orders zigzag. The giant leans slow but hard enough to smash coffee into bilges. The helmsman begs a head flank to cut inside the next run. Ito grants it, volunteering metal fatigue tomorrow in exchange for survival now. The staff speaks in numbers because anything else slips. Force them to attack across wake, not both sides at once. Make geometry our ally. Kubo calls starboard low, then the word everyone tastes, torpedo. The escorts start to pay in fractions. Yahagi throws her screws over to steal a minute and gives a life elsewhere. A bomb scratches her amidships. Smoke coughs out of vents and aft mounts fall silent. A Sashimo slides out of line, engine or fate, and then is gone. Gaps open in the fence that was supposed to shear tracks. Yamamoto redraws the formation with squeaking grease and the knowing that erasures make angles for enemies. Graves' second wave rides smoke like road. She stacks torpedo planes to port of track, dive bombers to starboard, tells Helldivers to go high for pagoda and forward directors. Not just holes. Saturation. She tells low men to skim whitecaps to scramble lead angles. Torpedoes need room to arm. Yamato needs time to turn. Give neither. A destroyer on the horizon lies down to die. The screen is losing teeth. First torpedoes touch water with obscene grace. White wakes, unspooling in fans, the sea highlights. Kubo yells port approach. The helm throws hard over. The ship heels. The rudder bites. We try to comb tracks to meet fish with length, not belly. Gun captains argue whether to keep skyfire or throw 127s at waterline to burst torpedoes. Doctrine and improvisation fight on a sloping deck where brass casings roll. A fish passes clean down starboard as the heel pulls us away. The bridge breathes in time to hear the next scream. One tracks wider toward stern. The helmsman asks for opposite rudder to swing the tail clear. Ito places his name on muscle memory and says, "Do it." A white bloom opens behind, wake torn but empty. For a heartbeat, we imagine rhythm. Then the sky puts on 6 records at once. Graves adjusts. Port hits unclaimed, shift 5 degrees starboard, tighten spacing. One voice, absent earlier, doesn't answer. She pushes thought of him under the weight of a window closing. Late arrivals must force choices. Guns versus rudder. You can't do both cleanly when lists and lag have their say. Flooding reports creep in, sticky and slow. Port forward sees seams sweat. Tanaka keeps countermeasures dry while he can, tests lines, then the hull tremors and the world goes over 2 more degrees. He sends runners down where lights fail. One doesn't come back. He writes it on the ledger only his head keeps. We owe the ship a life. Ito fights the straight instinct. Every zig wastes fuel and speed. Every straight becomes a platter for knives. He looks at a clock he despises and says, "Keep the heel. Better bury a rail than take a midships hit." Kubo finds a group in the blind quadrant under the tower, and the word torpedo is now a steady taste. The pagoda takes a punch that matters more to brains than steel. An AP bomb drills down before it blooms, bursting in a corridor runners used when wires failed. Forward director lines sputter and die. Gunners fall to local control, which is aiming with a blindfold on. Smoke crawls down ladders against logic. A chief beats flame with a hat because the hose is a snake without pressure. Orders become a hand on a shoulder, a mouth close to an ear. Yamato still throws power the way a monarch throws decree. Useless against a republic of planes. The big guns stand stilled for lack of a horizon. Men inside those turrets grind teeth at irrelevance. Pre-war debates about ship versus plane are stripped of words and remade into heat on the face and a bomb's bone wine. We came to signal army boys in coral caves. The message is being torn, letter by letter, by men who will never see our faces. Graves angles left, a textbook port kill if the textbook were written today. She tells torpedo planes to raise depth a foot for chop. Whitecaps kick fish off lines. She expects Yamato to show starboard soon to even damage. She writes asymmetry into orders. Decoys starboard at medium to pull eyes. True threat hugging port so lead angles get messy. Over the radio, someone calls her a chess player. She is listening for the dull note through steel that means a number turned into loss. The ship heels early for the next wakes. The rudder sings a note Tanaka doesn't like. Fuel to grant miracles is vanishing. The list begins to feel like a personality. The helm orders hard over. The sea answers with lag. White wakes cross like claws, and the question is, seconds, will steel or water win this tempo? As the first torpedoes enter the water, the helm orders hard over. Will the next wake find flesh? The white lines spread. The ship leans until boots feel the floor argue. Dive bombers peel with sunfire on their wings. Bombs walk water ahead to stalk our dodge. In CIC, grease marks smear as the bearing ring spins. Left, hard left, cuts out when a blast pops a bulb and the space goes to red. The turn buys seconds. Seconds are life until they are not. Kubo's hands shake on the Type 22 crank, the scope going snowy with every near hit. He swaps to glass, eyes tearing in tracer wind. "Port low!" "Torpedo planes!" he shouts. Radar loses them inside chop. "Bring her around. Keep the wakes ahead," the bridge answers. Combing tracks only works if the helm beats the arithmetic the pilots already wrote. The first torpedo lands far port, low and mean, a concussion that shakes rooms where men do not have names anymore. Bulkheads sing, gauges spit, lights blow out in showers across mess tables. In the engine room, Tanaka feels it as a sideways punch, catches himself on a valve wheel hot enough to smoke his gloves. "Hold steam," he barks. Voice fights the hiss of leaks and the whistled panic of lungs. Needles jitter above red. He shoulders a man aside and turns until the wheel answers. A second fish cracks higher near midships. DC teams wade in oily water to buy an angle back with more sea. Counterflood starboard. The list begins as a lie you can tell yourself is a turn. It isn't. 15 degrees is the floor-picking sides. Doors slam, one takes a hand with it. A petty officer kicks mangled fingers free because sealing buys time. They pay in pain for buoyancy. On the bridge, Ito's jaw sets. "We cannot keep swinging. We lose speed," he says, eyes on a course that used to mean Okinawa. He knows torpedo patterns. He knows the hearts behind him. "Maintain 19, he orders, a compromise in a world that stopped honoring them. He will not let her become a drifting target while men still look to him. Above, Graves hears clipped strike chatter. "Port hits. She's listing." Heavy flak, breaking right. She keeps egress patterns and altitudes disciplined. "Do not overfly the cone," she repeats. Second wave. Torp shallow, bearings alternating, dives tight on the tower. Her pencil adds wind calls on an oil-smudged board. Plans bleed. Now they will drown the plan. Escorts pay with their own names. Yahagi tries to dance and takes a shin break. Steam and flame fan along her belly. A destroyer smokes until her stern lifts, and she is gone by halves. With every escort down, Yamato's sky grows emptier. The flak net thins. 25s chatter until barrels glow. Recoil springs go sluggish. Crews go deaf and mouth proverbs because words were taught to keep hands steady. Jam magazines clear with bare palms, skin sloughing. Nobody stops for blood. Bombs find new ways in. One goes through the boat deck near the pagoda and bursts 2 decks down, oxygen sucked out of a passage. Another breaks open near turret 3 and sets paint to blister. The main battery trains because that is what it knows to do. It finds cloud. Yamamoto wants a cruiser silhouette and a horizon. He gets angles in the sky. He orders the 127s to bracket a dive path. Shells blossom late. A Val flickers through smoke and lives. Courtesy is past. Kubo sees the torpedo planes coordinate without panic. Some insist on port, some slide to starboard beyond flak, geometry arranged with care. They are herding, he thinks, testing seams, forcing flood choices, looking for the one knock that becomes a shove. "Starboard low, second group," he yells. A bomb has broken a cable gutter. Forward phones are dead. Runners become arteries. Tanaka chooses sin. He overfires number 2 past the manual's last read. "You'll blow tubes," a young man says, because even terror remembers rules. "After we move," Tanaka answers. He is squeezing minutes into knots. The feed pump cavitates. He slaps it like a mule, and it obeys, then sulks, then obeys. Courage and doom share a rhythm. In the chart room, a report lands like a nail. Port aft fuel tank pierced. Consumption, leakage, drag from deepening draft, all add up. The ship is heavier by tons of water. Screws dig deeper, and each turn buys less. I remember the manifest's one-way stamp and the clerk's eyes. The paper decided tone stronger than any speech. Kubo sees a fighter peel low and lazy, daring the 25s. It drops a small canister that bounces under a gun and spews green smoke. Not a bomb. A marker. Moments later, torpedo planes take that drawn line like a rail. They mark us, he coughs. Eyes water. The planes write a straight line into a box we can't scrape away. New trick, new cost. The helm orders starboard. The rudder answers late. The list sticks at 18. A correction comes 5 seconds late for 25 seconds, the pilot's already planned. Another torpedo bites forward of the turrets. Steel crumples where cameras can't see. The forepeak drinks. Thirst doesn't care about pride. Flood starboard voids, Ito orders, for the last time it will help. Ruthless arithmetic he never thought he'd deliver. Take in death to level guns long enough to matter. Men chest deep in black turn valves under ghost green light and phosphorus. They wait for the hull to tell them if their math holds or if the ocean will grade them cruel. Graves watches splash patterns and circles her Hellcat, eyes cutting sky and sea. Keep torps low and slow, she says, make their 25s hunt both sides. She thinks of ammo burn rates, of nerves draining with each pass, of 1,000 cuts being fatal. Second wave, commence in 30. Fuel is a tyrant. Finishing takes discipline. In Turret 1, soldiers of a different war stay at stations. A young man in the shell room lays hands on an 18-inch projectile as if touch could give purpose. "We should throw them," he says. The chief laughs once, sharp as a fragment. Above, steel sleets across the roof. Men flinch. They climb back inside their roles. Circuits vanish like shoreline lights. DC Central goes islanded. After steering, stands in cold salt and wonders what the forward wheel thinks. Runners multiply. Each cross-deck sprint is a lottery with tracer tickets. How long can we keep 25? We send to Tanaka. The runner doesn't return. A second goes, carrying the same question and the same odds. Tanaka writes on the back of his hand with grease pencil, pressures, feeds, truths a man can carry in sweat. The letters blur. Arking sings like a voice you used to hear at dinner. He remembers Kure when the ship was new, pipes like silver bones. He spits black and makes a prayer newer than Shinto. 1 more minute. He gives it. On deck, Kubo sees the fact that cannot be denied. The list has become a habit. High-side guns stare at heaven. Low-side guns aim into water that has climbed the sky. Men on port walkways wade. The ensign shreds into prayer flags. He calculates the angle at which the mounts stop elevating enough to meet the next run. The number is close. "Permission to scuttle if we lose steering," Yamamoto asks, hating that duty fits his voice. Ito looks south at a rain bar that hides Okinawa. "If we cannot fight, we will not be boarded by water," he says. The order goes into Yamamoto's pocket like a coin for a ferryman. He hopes he won't need to buy that passage. The Americans change angles. Torpedoes now come from starboard. Keep the list and accept a low-side hit that kills or swing and show the textured under to new teeth. Ito buys a minute. "Starboard 10, he orders. The ship answers like a woman with a bruised hip. Torpedoes take what she offers. The list climbs from 18 to 20. The horizon in the bridge windows goes diagonal. "Hit starboard, list increasing," Graves notes. Next package, engine spaces aft of midships. She smells cordite where there should be only salt. "She won't make the beach," someone says. She doesn't answer. Pity folds neatly under fuel math. Finish before weather kills sight picture. She lines the last arrows. Small detonations sound like a cough. Auxiliary AA magazines pop like firecrackers. Steam jets turn a sailor's leg white and silent. A mess cook carries a loader who is more rag than man. He sets him down in stack shade and puts a cup to lips that can't close. The shade disappears as the stack flares. The boy goes with it. Gentle lasts seconds here. A chalk X marks our guest position. It is a lie of confidence. The sea mocks arithmetic when you leak this much. Speed? Someone asks. 17, a voice says. The deck says 13. No one corrects it. Numbers prop courage for 5 minutes. 5 minutes is a crown now. Okinawa gets a circle on the chart as if ink could draw gravity. Tanaka hears the main shaft chatter. Bearings bored to hairs now grind grit. He leans in, ear to metal, like a doctor to a drowning chest. He has heard this once and lived. There is no yard now, no straightening later. Back off 100, he tells a throttlesman who wants to save speed. The man says no to physics and then yes. Kubo chokes smoke and doesn't need eyes to feel the next wave. Pressure changes the air. Panic in other men's limbs moves ahead of steel. He braces under the mast and holds binoculars like a ritual mask. The first of the new attackers line on a bearing his hand already wrote on a filthy scrap. He glances to the bridge and sees a signalman tying a flag as if any eye can still read. It says, "Do not abandon." Bridge voices harden. Flooding forward generators. List 22. Starboard pumps lag. Aft magazine heating. Ito raises a hand. Silence. In it, the ship talks instead. A deep knocking from the frame, a heart confused by water and angles. We are at the place plans had no words for. The next order decides whether we fight an enemy or a ship. Flooding spreads under the armor. With radios failing, can anyone still save the ship from the inside? Tanaka's world is hammering heat and oil underfoot, gauges quivering at red. He keeps pressure in the mains because pumps die without it. Without pumps, all compartments become one. The hull's complaint comes through his boots, frames carrying the ocean where it doesn't belong. He orders emergency adductors on. A green light flutters, dies. He sends a messenger up a ladder, slick with fuel, and thinks like a gambler. Someone above has to choose what to let go. Ito holds the chart's edges as if paper were an anchor. Pumping buys angle, kills speed. The list denies 46-centimeter guns their elevation. Thunder turns to silence in real time. He asks after Yahagi and gets only wind in the line. He watches a signalman's cheeks crusted with salt and tells the captain to beach on any land that appears. There is none within our square. The nearest white is breaker foam. Kubo, eyes raw, sweeps for teeth. The scope shows blooms at the edge, transient ghosts you must bet on because power spikes are bleeding the set and manuals never dreamed this sky. He draws grease arcs, trending port quarter to starboard bow like a net. 210 low, another high opposite, he calls. Opposite bearing split AA. Mounts creek. He remembers the lighthouse back home and calls again, more, many, north. Graves rides a roar, 2 squadrons on her voice. Bring torps shallow from the lean side, then switch. Dive bombers pin the helm, fighters rake. The first wave spoke of hits and flak. Now she sees the slanted palace throwing fury at specks. She calls the split. Devastators one way, Avengers another, Helldivers to pinch eyes and brain, and reminds them not to bunch in wakes. Carriers behind her are anchors made of wind. They bet fuel and men on her geometry. Yahagi wallows amid geysers. Bombs walk her deck and she becomes a guttering flare. A sashimo vanishes under a column as if erased by a hand. Hamikaze takes a midships fish and goes from ship to scrap in a minute. The screen is a torn curtain. Yamato stands in the gap alone. A bomb wave unwinds, sunlight flashing off wings as they peel. The big guns promise worlds and swat nothing. 127s bark, 25s chatter, barrels red. A bomb kisses the edge of turret 3 and fans white fire through seams. Blast gases hound through Tanaka's spaces. "Keep firing!" gun captains howl. Noise is a weapon against panic, even when steel is the only thing that matters. A torpedo runs true into the port bow, where belt gives way to skin. The ship rolls, tests capsize with a long, slow thought, then fights back. Counter-flooding orders take minutes we do not have. DC teams feel the air taste of copper and know they are submerging to save a ship that hates the weight. Numbers on the clinometer jump. To right the giant, they must sink her deeper. Tanaka watches shaft speed fall without the telegraph moving and curses a physics book that won't negotiate. The pagoda becomes a silhouette no pilot can resist. A bomb falls clean through the operations platform and bursts among radios that were already failing. Runners replace wire, legs replace copper. One runner screams when a door takes his fingers and then quiet when bone snaps. Another arrives giggling and bloody with a sheet of pulp. Ito uses eyes and hands to move men because sound has been stolen. The mission in his head rewrites itself on the fly. Not Okinawa now, not Army, just endings his crew can still bear. Graves pushes the bearing change. Port hits took effect, now starboard to compound inertia. The list becomes a trap. She hears a man too calm say, "Torp away, turning," and she imagines the feel of straps and rubber and counting. She weighs fuel against weather and brings them home in her head, even while throwing them into one more pass. Finish, then leave, before giants take you down with them. Below, Tanaka's men fight steam with steam. A shock wave makes them spit blood. Valves spring like mines giving up. The chief knows every ladder by knee and hip, and feels this ship tilt wrong in his bones. A pipe splits along seam, and the space turns flaxen with superheat. He gropes blind for a boy's collar and drags him toward what used to be an exit until he meets wall. He tells himself a lie about lying to his mother and keeps moving. Up forward, a team tries to keep the ensign out of the sea. Two bombs choose their moment. The capstan roof disappears in fire. Splinters turn the deck into a hedgehog that pins boots where men can't stay. Kubo leaves the radar only when a fuse burns itself to sugar and stands in an open hatch calling bearings with fingers as compass. He sees the next line as a constellation and picks a star for a 25 to chase. A helmet knocks his shin and rolls to a scupper with the sound of a head not attached anymore. The helmsman fights a drunk wheel. Rudder bight is unpredictably thin with damage and cavitation. Every heading change draws a crooked wake. Crooked wakes invite smart fish. Hard over, the captain orders to comb port. The hull obeys too slow while starboard counterflood pulls against it like a man turning in sleep. One torpedo misses. One slams under number 1 turret. The foundation ring groans like a hill under a train. Speed? The captain asks. No one says a number he believes. A bomb chews the 127's brain, central director, and coordinated fire dies into local. Local under this sky is attrition. Gunners fire because firing is a verb that makes time go, and blooms of white puncture clouds away from where planes are now. Spent brass skitters like coins, rate slows. Ammunition becomes time. The torpedo that matters most kisses a seam aft of midships where armor thins. The list twitches to 8, 10, 12, then slides. The deck's horizon betrays feet and eyes. Shells roll. Men become weights tied to wrists. Abandoned starboard holds becomes rope and bodies climbing against gravity. On the rail, faces become one face, the look people wear when the floor keeps moving. Ito feels the tilt and knows he must speak the last order that isn't theater. He chooses the pipe. Prepare to go over, he tells the ship. Grab what floats. He doesn't say suicide or surrender. He says live if you can. He imagines that phrase winding through smoke to lockers with pictures taped inside. He adjusts his cap because his hands need a job and because the space between biography and ritual is thin. A runner bursts in with a rumor, counterflood stabilized at 19, and the rumor hits the room without making dent in the angle on the Polaris. Graves calls last pass for sanity and fuel. Contrails scribble over a page that's finished. She circles at range, counts like an accountant taught by war, pen-making marks that will become a clean report. The pagoda tilts, the banner shreds, a turret roof is missing, oil in the wake burns lazy. Rescue flights as practicable, she adds to her call without expecting an answer. She holds for 3 heartbeats longer than policy, and then noses home to long gray decks and bad coffee. In the belly, Tanaka hears the worst report. Magazine flooding incomplete. He knows what cordite wants to be when given heat. He sends 2 men with tape and axes and leans his forehead to a warm valve until steel is a fevered child. He thinks of powder rooms under turrets 2 and 3, of interlocks that meant safety yesterday. He tells a burned boy to go up, and the boy shakes his head and stays. Tanaka saves the breath. He needs it to argue with a pump that stopped believing. Kubo climbs toward light because light is at least honest. The deck is a carnival trick, an inclined plane that makes fools and dead men. He points at rafts, ropes, horizons. A man shoves a cheap notebook into his hand, pages filled with names and addresses. If you live, tell... The man coughs black and stops. Kubo tucks the book in his shirt. It sticks there like a promise. The mast's legs glow cherry. Cables pop, each note a whip. A sailor is cut in 2 by a sound he doesn't hear. The list settles at 15, ticks to 20. Water runs down armor like a new shoreline. Men understand all at once, that terrible human efficiency. She is going. Ito turns to his men. A petty officer clutches a flag like language still works. The admiral bows to the room, to the ship, to a country, and those who can bow back do. He refuses a life jacket and ritual until the last necessary order is given. Below, a runner arrives with a rumor that the list has eased. Reality holds its angle. Graves gives RTB because fuel says so. Her planes trail home in 1s and 2s. She circles once more to fix the picture in her own head, a slanted palace on fire, a flag in tatters, a black seam where steel tore. She calls the carriers. Target suffered secondary explosion, breaking up. Coordinates for survivors. Caution underlined, enemy in area. She turns toward a deck already being cleared for the next launch. In the water, men become shadows, equal under oil. Rank and skill go out with the last breath before salt. Some call mothers, some call names that won't answer. Oil burns where it thickens. Men scull through it with mouths clamped. A destroyer edges in until tracers from somewhere remind of what rescue costs. Lines snake out, boats drop, hands find other hands and pull. Dozens climb, then hundreds, then fewer as fatigue stretches. Ito is not seen again by eyes that survive. His name takes an asterisk. Tanaka's space goes quiet like a bell was set over it, and he is last seen at a wheel that didn't turn. If Kubo lives, a soggy notebook will cross a country to a door. If he doesn't, he becomes part of a cloud that rained on the East China Sea. The math of who floats has no poetry. Men will tell it anyway because mouths do not know how to stay closed. On another deck, hoses chase soot off non-skid. Bomb racks click shut. Pilots write fuel left, rounds expended, whether chutes were seen. In a wardroom, a map gets a black cross. Radios carry the words into rooms where forks clatter. The carriers turn into wind because they always do. The machine grabs another gear. A destroyer circles until a speck on her horizon grows teeth. She weighs one more loop against men already aboard and turns away. Rafts jam with oil-slicked figures. A boy with seared hands keeps the knot in a rope anyway. A petty officer counts heads and hears engines in the distance and cannot tell if they are coming back or leaving. He throws another line and prepares to cut it if he must. A column of white and red lifts where steel has been arguing with the sky. Magazine gases talk at last, a single syllable that bends wind into a ring. Armor petals arc high, flash, and fall. The ocean flinches and then levels its face. Debris sleets down, plate and splinters and soot and oil that finds mouths and refuses to leave. Men cover faces not against heat, but against rain. Graves feels hot wind slap even where she circles. She radios the report and the request for rescue, gets back coordinates and cautions. She lingers a breath too long, then goes. Debrief waits, lunch waits, another mission waits. Empty seats at the table will explain themselves when nobody complains about the coffee. The sea takes the last of the shape and leaves black tongues licking across the swell. Oil spreads a mirror that shows no one you'd recognize. Boards, a lifebuoy, a boot with laces snag in a line of flotsam that has no destination men will ever see. Distant engines fade, hiss and flame remain. A rescue boat takes one more pass, eyes on a horizon that won't stop moving, and makes its choice. The black rain freckles the water where the flagship stood, and the swell rolls over it as the next decision rides toward the sound.